But I started getting these calls from these medical doctors who, first of all, didn't want to treat themselves with their own treatments, with the drugs or the surgeries. And so they would maybe prescribe the things for their patients, but then they would use natural remedies for themselves and their family members.
Chances are you've been here before. There's chaos in the oil and stock markets. New threats seem to be coming out of nowhere. Tensions are boiling from Asia to Europe. Adaptation is the key here to safeguarding your wealth, friends. You may not have considered gold before. It's not speculation, but insurance. And right now, we could all use some insurance. Noble Gold Investments have been protecting investors from disaster for years with precious metals. This might be the time for you to take a fresh look at gold and silver. Gold is a proven safe haven shield for your portfolio and a volatility balance against uncertainty. If it helps, Noble Gold Investments is offering a free 5-ounce America the Beautiful coin with its new IRAs this month. If you open your Noble Gold Investments IRA or 401k rollover, you can claim your coin today. Remember, crisis brews, portfolio waivers, gold insulates. Secure yourself against the threats. Go to noblegoldinvestments.com now. That's noblegoldinvestments.com, the gold company I trust. Hey, Inspired Tribe, my fellow freedom lovers, it's John Nolan here. Thank you so much for tuning in to another inspired conversation. And this one is especially for you if you're as excited as Christine and I are, and our whole family actually, about nature's amazing gifts, how we can use them, how we can work with them. Because the guest that we're bringing on today is a master herbalist, and this runs in her blood. It's a multi-generational thing, and she has an amazing story to tell. Maybe you've heard of her. It's quite possible. Please welcome with me Jane Barlow from Barlow Herbal. Thank you so much for joining us today, Jane.
Oh, thank you, John. It's so nice to be here. Like-minded souls find each other, don't they?
Oh yeah, absolutely. You're spot on with that, Jane. And I want to start with how we really got introduced to you. This spring, you sent us this beautiful book of yours, Be Your Own Shaman, and it's a masterful book, just beautifully done, where you talk about how to utilize herbs, how to do that, how to use them for your and the plant healers, if you will, how to use them in your own life. And this is what your life is really dedicated to. You're the how can I put this? Probably a co-founder, if you will, or a refounder
Yeah.
of Barlow Herbal, one of the most amazing companies that we've come across in a very, very long time. Your work, your presence, your love is just absolutely beautiful and shining. So tell us a little bit about your journey and maybe even your dad's journey, because that's where it all began, isn't it?
Yeah, my dad was, we laughed about this in other conversations. My dad was a true rebel and he was brilliant. In fact, the book that you just brought out, I brought my dad's original book. So some of your listeners might have seen this. My dad wrote this book called From the Shepherd's Purse, and he wrote this when I was in high school. So it's been now out of print for about 45 years. And my dad passed away 26 years ago, and his business kind of died with him. But he's one of those people that saw the world for really differently than what we're taught to believe or how we're programmed to believe. And I'm second oldest of 14 kids. So when we were little kids, not only were we
14, that's just always
right,
amazing to say that.
I know, and so I mean, because I grew up that way. It still kind of shocks people, but it rolls off my tongue because I can't imagine my life without any of my 14 siblings.
And I didn't mean to interrupt, Jane, but
Yeah,
wasn't it kind of like that? Didn't your mom say to your dad, "Hey, I want to have 12 or 14 children or whatever"?
yeah, they met in college, and she said when they met, I think it was on a first or second date. She said, "I want a dozen kids," and my dad was like, "All right, let's do this." He
I
was
love it.
he wanted a big family too, and I really believe after all the years as the kids started coming that my dad, I don't think he realized my mom was literal until it was. And then, talk about two people who loved kids and saw the shiny souls that they were. And the last 5 babies were born at home. And because I'm second to the oldest, I used to get to, you know, be right outside the door. My dad would come out of the bedroom and be like, "You got a new brother," and we never knew if it was a boy or a girl. And of course, there was a couple times there was a midwife there, but for the most part, it was my dad delivering the babies, and we would get to hold our sibling within a few minutes of being born. And the love that is wrapped around a family like that. I mean, I'm just getting chills just thinking about it. And honestly, I can't imagine not having all of the siblings that I have. I do remember, I will tell you, when I was a teenager and my mom and dad would gather us all together to announce they were going to have another baby, and say there were like 10 of us then. And I'd be like, "Oh no, please don't tell." I was embarrassed that, my parents were still procreating. But of course, you grow up and you're like, "Okay, this is great," right?
Oh my God, I love this so much. And I'm sorry I interrupted you, but I just thought this is such a beautiful and rare thing today. But Jane, you've been sharing your story with us over the last months when we had our conversations. And what I
Yeah.
loved every time you talk about your dad, I'm like, oh, this is so my kind of guy. He was a real rebel. Give us a little bit of those juicy, beautiful things that you shared with us.
Oh my gosh. Well, because he had such a love for nature and plants, and he also had and taught us like a massive skepticism for the government, for the medical system, for the education system. We dipped in and out of education as far as my parents would pull us out, my mom would homeschool us. For a little while, she would get overwhelmed because there not only were teenagers and grade schoolers, but there were babies and toddlers. I mean, there was a wide range. So she'd get a little bit overwhelmed sometimes, and we'd go back into public school. But my dad, when he was making his formulas, a lot of our tinctures are made with 190 proof alcohol. So because he didn't like the way everything was regulated, he felt like we were over-regulated, which we are. But he would go drive to Mexico. We were living in Idaho, and he would drive to Mexico. He hooked up a double tank on his great big Ford. I think it was a Dodge, actually, a big truck, and there were two gas tanks, and one of them.
Yeah, I remember those two tanks. Love those.
Right, right. I know, great. I mean, so then he rigged one of them up to actually hold this organic alcohol, and he would smuggle it across the Mexican border up to Idaho, and he would make his tinctures. And that was just one thing that it was like, and as adults now, and especially what's happened, the last 3.5 years, it's like we are so grateful that we had that. Don't trust everything that you see. Use your best discernment. We were taught critical thinking skills from very, very young. We got to listen to adults. We got to, my dad would have all these friends who were natural healers, like chiropractors, iridologists, acupuncturists. These were my dad's friends, and my mom's too. And they would come over, and after dinner, we'd all be getting our eyes, iridology charts done, and all of us would be getting our backs cracked and our, it was just this was just normal. And of course, it was like, we didn't want any of our friends to come over because it was like, well, this is normal for us, but you're going to think that we're just super, super weird. Um,
That's what our children literally always said.
yeah,
He said when we went somewhere, a school function, they'd go, just for once, can you all be normal? I
right.
couldn't comply with it, but yeah, that's
Right.
I
Yeah.
can relate to that.
And the thing is that they'll appreciate it. They appreciate it later, because I think your kids are all adults too, right?
They are. They do appreciate it now.
Yeah.
It rubbed off on them, so I can't help
Yeah.
it. But yeah,
Yeah, and I think honestly that's one of the best gifts you can give your kids is the thought to think for yourself, not follow the crowds. I mean, one of my favorite places to be is on the outside. Like, I don't want to be doing what the masses are doing. If everyone's over here doing this, even if it's something, like a really good, like, I'm not a fan of, like, I don't follow sports, and I don't judge anybody who follows sports. I think that's fine. And there's camaraderie. I know there's a lot of really good things about it. But one of my least favorite things is being in a great big crowd of people. Like I would prefer, like, I've been to a few concerts, and I would just as soon be in my backyard watching the sunset, listening to the music. in a quiet, beautiful place or with a small group of friends. In fact, one of the things that we love to do is every summer we put on this piece of music. It's Tchaikovsky's 1812, and it's a beautiful 21-minute. It's a very recognizable piece of music because it's little bits of it have been used in a lot of things. But we put this on. We invite a group of friends, a small group of friends who enjoy music like that. We do potluck and we sit out in our backyard and we watch the sunset with our favorite people and we put on this beautiful piece of music. So this is just one of those things that my dad and mom really taught us is it's better on the outside of the crowds than, if everyone's over here doing that and the crowds are in line to go buy the latest iPhone or whatever it is, over here it's better. And I think that to me that is one of the best gifts that any parent can give their kid are these things that they might fight against, but then when they become adults they go, oh, like every day I go, my dad was so smart. And I used to kind of think he was this, I knew he was smart, but I used to think he's kind of a hippie.
Mhm.
He would put on his moccasins and he would he'd go out to the desert by himself. Now, I think doing that for like a week was kind of self-preservation because if you think about
14 kids.
right. So, yeah.
Jane, I would love to get your perspective on something. The we have now, especially over the last 2.5 years, there is an opening in the way that healing and medicine and whatnot is perceived. It is changing, but mainly it's people coming from the mainstream medical sector opening their minds and beginning to see a bigger picture. And that perspective is fairly interesting. But you were never indoctrinated into that system. You were brought up in the natural way. Can you give us your perspective, the way you were brought up on health, on healing, on the body and the connection to herbs, nature, and plant medicine? What is your authentic perspective on all of it?
Well, I really do recognize the fact that I'm extremely blessed. I believe that, I believe we choose to come down to the families we come to. And I, the way our parents really raised us, besides the things that they would say, it was really example. I was born in 1961, so that's when the vaccines kind of started rolling out, and um, my parents just never did that. We just never did it. And what my perspective on this is, as I've gotten older and just decade by decade, I watch people. I used to teach these classes at it was at a police academy. They were for 40 years I taught exercise classes, and it was just a passion of mine I did on the side. And um, every year they would bring in a group of nurses to inoculate all the cadets and all of their families for free. And they'd be like, Jane, come on, come and get it's free, your annual flu shot. And I'd be like, no, thanks. And honestly, I didn't really think about it. It was never, well, here's why you shouldn't. And that was
Hmm.
just simply part of it. But what I feel like has happened especially the last 3.5 years is I think that there's this huge, there's definitely a crumble of the systems that have been programming us. But here's the thing, and this is really cool. I started my dad's company about 22 years ago, 4 years after he passed. And about 5 years in, I started getting phone calls, surprisingly, from medical doctors. Because for the most part, my customers were naturopaths and acupuncturists and chiropractors and people who practice natural medicine. And then, of course, other just people like moms and dads who would want to, use the herbs for their families. But I started getting these calls from these medical doctors who, first of all, didn't want to treat themselves with their own treatments, with the drugs or the surgeries. And so they would maybe prescribe the things for their patients, but then they would use natural remedies for themselves and their family members because they saw that they were not only working, but they were so much less invasive, of course. And then what would happen is they would have a patient come in that would get diagnosed with something kind of gnarly. So think about, you have a patient that gets diagnosed with, say, something like diabetes, and the patient's like, I don't really want to go on these medications. Is there anything I can do naturally? So you have this doctor who's like, okay, I took the Hippocratic Oath, which said, first do no harm. And so he's got a motivated patient. And so what I found was happening is I was getting these people that were finding me through their medical doctor. So they didn't sell my stuff in their practice, but they would say, well, go here, do this. And then of course they would give them lifestyle things. You know, you need to lose weight, you need to exercise, you need to get your stress levels down, whatever else it is. So you have these motivated people, and they would, and so I was it. And now, so by the time this all hit, this whole 2020 thing, I have a pretty large group of medical doctors who realize the system is broken, and they've kind of been quietly just doing their own thing and taking care of themselves the way Mother Nature intended. So I think that we're in a huge opportunity, because it feels like, even though there was a lot of angst, I personally had a ton of angst during 2020, because I'm like, wake up, everybody, wake up, come on. And there is
So a different kind of angst than
a
most people.
different, very, very, very different, because I was like, yeah. So I think that people, this has been a jolt. This is like, you know, because we don't, most people don't look at something that's outside their comfort zone unless they're hit over the head.
See, to me, it begins with how we describe it or how we use language. Like I'm always just smiling or laughing when people say, "Oh, this is alternative medicine." I go, "No, no, no, no." When you go to Walgreens and CVS and whatever you buy off the shelf, most of it, now it's getting better, but most of it is alternative medicine. It's artificial medicine. But let's give it a. You have such a beautiful assortment of products. I mean, um, I say this to you every single time because you sent me this amazing throat spray, and because I sing and because I talk all the time, it's like a blessing. I just do 2 pumps whenever I feel like it, and it feels amazing, really amazing. But it's we're getting into the colder season here, and where you're at too. So something that's going to be common for a lot of people this winter is where they're going to have cold like whatever they call it, flu like, cold like symptoms, runny nose, cough, fever. So we are programmed to run into the store pharmacy and get all these medications, flu, whatever, and whatever. What do you do, Jane? And what does your family do when they develop symptoms like that?
Oh my goodness. So to me, this is super, super easy, because this is something. Um, so in the throat spray, there's like 14 herbs, but there's also the unique herb that's in there that most people have never heard of is a plant called Lomatium. And it is a Native American plant. It grows in the Pacific Northwest, and it's never been successfully cultivated. In fact, this is really what I would say Barlow Herbal is kind of known for. And when I spend my time teaching and lecturing, and a new doctor finds me, I spend a ton of time educating people, especially on this plant, because it is what's known as a broad spectrum antimicrobial. So antiviral, antifungal, anti-yeast, antibacterial. It doesn't appear to disturb any beneficial bacteria. So that's the perfection of Mother Nature. But at the first sign of a cold or flu symptom, um, I just I just take we put it into a tincture, we put it into capsules, but I just take some Lomatium, and I take it daily during cold and flu season, or if I ever get on an airplane. So um, yeah, it to me, like, it's safe for babies. My kids had it when they were a couple of weeks old. My grandkids have taken it. And but it's like, there's also other things like echinacea will keep your immune system strong and help ward off a lot of symptoms of a cold. That's a really easy thing. Oil of oregano is a
Mhm.
beautiful antimicrobial. Um, so I to me, like, not like, you should see my little herbal apothecary I have at my house. And then I have a whole bunch of stuff that's curing in jars, and it looks like that Romeo and Juliet version where they go get the
Oh
poison,
yeah, yeah, yeah.
and there's all the tinctures and the plants and the stuff growing. It's to me, this is so empowering. If I, get a cough or a cold, or, I rest, I hydrate, and I will lay down if I need to. I never ever run and go get something from Walgreens or whatever. But here's the thing: people need to be brave, because I think when you start taking care of yourself, um, it's like, say, with an ear infection. This can be really scary for some people, especially if it's an ear infection in your child. It's like, well, what if I mess this up and I use this herb and it doesn't work, and my child loses part of their hearing? So there's this level of confidence that people definitely need to get by starting to use these things and getting familiar with them and watching them work. I don't know why. I do know why. We're so skeptical of natural remedies. People will take a prescription from their doctor that has all these nasty side effects, but they'll think, oh, I need to take this because my doctor says I need to take it. But then you say, well, here, if you take turmeric for inflammation, they'll turn into these massive researchers. It's like, oh, well, wait a minute.
Well, that's the programming, because
Yeah.
we were programmed to think that the way it has evolved is we would die of all these little diseases because we didn't have medicine and we didn't know anything, and people wouldn't get old and suffer through life. And we're realizing that the story might not be completely true on that. Some of our grandparents are still alive, and so they know a lot about natural remedies because that's what they had, that's what they used. What I love about your process, Jane, is there are other good quality supplement companies out there, but it's kind of like, here's a formulation, and here we're letting the factory produce it, we're letting this team here do the packaging, and they're going to do the shipping. You have a completely different approach from formulation. It begins with how you get inspired. I love that when you describe that, and then formulation, and then production, and then packaging. Run us through it, because I think it's unique and it's beautiful.
Yeah, and I think this is actually really important, and this comes definitely from my dad. So the plant Lomatium I was describing, where you can't cultivate it, we go out every fall, and that's when all the properties of the plant are the highest, and the part of the plant you get is the root. But we go out every fall and we wildcraft this plant, and so it's my sons. I have two sons, a couple of my brothers, now some of the nephews, and every once in a while a niece will jump in and grab a pickaxe, and it's kind of like this family tradition. Oh, have you done oh, you're 16, time to go out and collect Lomatium. But literally, from the moment we pull the roots out of the ground, in fact, my son Brian, who's a lover, he reminds me a lot of my dad. He's a lover of plants to the extent that I am. He will pull a root out of the ground, and this is not easy. These are Lomatium grows on rocky slopes that face south. They grow in really arid soil between rocks. So you have to know how to identify the plant. You need to know how big is the root by how many stalks, and I mean we can identify. And then we're going to put the seeds back in after we pull the root out, so that it can keep it's sustainable. But my one of my brothers and my son, they'll pull the roots out and they'll be like, who are you going to go out and heal? And they'll like
Oh,
literally love on and talk to the plants. And then we bring everything back, we chop it all up, we lay these roots on drying racks, and there's so much camaraderie and joking and hard work, and a lot of we just wrapped it up a couple of weeks ago, our Lomatium harvest this season, and it's dirt under the fingernails, sweaty, dirty, but there's so much love in the process. And then basically what we do is everything is made we used to make everything by hand ourselves, but we needed to get compliant. So we have a manufacturer just 45 minutes from where we are. They make them for us, and then they bring them to our fulfillment center. And we literally touch every bottle. We take the orders, the person who takes the orders, the one who packs it. And if we talk to someone, say, who's dealing with something kind of intense, like maybe a cancer diagnosis, we'll gather up their products, and sometimes we'll even hold them and give them love and healing energy before we pack them. Because we know that it's not just the power of the medicinal properties of the plants, but it's the energetic power of love that helps to heal people. So, um,
I
and
love that.
that's just the way we do it, and it's beautiful.
Well, Christine and I can. I mean, we're not doing what you're doing, but we can relate to the whole process of basically. It's a whole journey, and it begins with first contact, and it doesn't end with when it's shipped. It's a whole journey that and a connection that lasts, and you have, I assume, with every customer, and that's a beautiful thing because I think that's ultimately what all of this is about, anyways.
Yeah.
Um, Jane, I have a question because I see a tendency in quite a lot of people, including us actually, where we shared this on our channel that we live outside of the system
Hmm.
for quite some time, and you know we we were fixing to really go completely off the grid, and then we're called to not do that and basically return to the center of things. And interestingly enough, your family, your dad, he was an underground kind of guy. He was a rebel, like you said. He did things completely different, and you then made the choice to bring it above ground, if you will.
Yeah.
Why did you make that choice? Because I see many people doing it. What was your inspiration for that?
Well, I knew that I needed to honor my dad and bring his work out to more people. And I personally feel very, very comfortable out, doing what I do. And um, I also feel like I always put a bubble of protection over our place where we work and over whenever we're out harvesting, and I really felt like I can't just keep this amazing healing to myself, because I could have kept this small. When I started, my kids were just out of high school, and I could keep it small. My intention in the beginning was to provide these formulas for my siblings and myself, because it was like we count on them. And when my dad passed away, it was like we used up the stock of what he had, and it was like, okay, now what? Um, so I just thought, if I can grow this organically, great. And then I started to realize, especially when people would get a hold of me and say, your formula, I have to tell you what happened. This, and I have people tell me they feel like their lives were saved because of what we do. And I feel humbled every day that I get to affect people. So my intention is that it has to be above board so that I can reach more people.
I totally get it, and there's something that was recently brought to our attention by now mutual friends is that I've never thought about it this way, but the vast majority of people, 99 point something percent, live in this economized society, and in this economized society, they're more receptive to things when they are, let's say, when they come in a certain perception bubble, if you will. So it's
Yeah.
just a different, and as such, I think this is the service that we're providing in that bubble, and it seems to make a difference. So I totally agree with the approach. I wouldn't have 10 years ago, but I do agree with the approach now. I think it's absolutely beautiful. We would love to have you back on. We would love to share more about your story, but for today, please let us know where people can get this beautiful book, where they can find you online. You have your own YouTube channel, very, very inspiring. And how can people purchase your beautiful products?
Well, so the book is, I brought this out this year, and I self-published it, so it's only available on our website, and which is the same place you can get any of our products. And it's barlowherbal.com, super easy, Barlow, Herbal. And then what I would suggest people do is if you go to the website, you can put catalog in the search engine, and you can download. It's a 68 page. It's like an education booklet, is what it is. And if you live in the U.S., we send you a hard copy with your first order. But I would suggest you do that. There's a ton of information, because to me, education is what gives you the confidence to start using herbs on this level. um, there's so many things that I have not done that, like, in with the normal doctor things. And I have people that are like, well, aren't you scared not to go get all these tests? And I'm just like, no, I'm not. So I think people need to educate themselves and get confidence. But the book is, I'm very proud of it. It's definitely, it
It's
took me,
beautiful.
it took me 4 years, thank you, to bring it to the world. And I know my dad is proud, but it's only available on our website because it's self-published.
Everybody, this is one of the most beautiful gifts we've received, and I remember, when I opened the package, just how beautiful it felt to just hold the book. And I said this before. This is with everything that Jane and her team do. Every product that you touch feels wonderful, even before you open it or use it. So go to barlowherbal.com. Please look around. I'm sure you will get inspired, and also hop over on YouTube to Barlow Herbal. That's the name of the channel. And Jane goes on frequently with inspiring messages and uplifting messages and truthful messages, and just beautiful work all around. Jane, thank you so much for joining us today. It was an honor.
Oh, thank you, Sean. It's so nice to be invited on your channel. I've been following you for a long time, and that's why I sent you my book, just because I'm like, I need to thank you for putting all the inspiration and truth that you put out. So yeah, it's an honor. Thank you for having me on.
Thank you, Jane, and we look forward to having you on back again soon. There's lots more to talk about. And
Indeed.
oh yeah, I know. And Inspired Tribe, thank you for joining us. We love you. We appreciate you, and we'll be back with you again very, very soon. You deserve the truth, but big tech does not want you to hear it. So we built our own Inspired platform on the inspiredchannel.com. Just click the link in the video description or the pinned comment.